Alright, what's up guys? I hope you all are having a great day today, full of so much positivity and happiness, because today I'm going to be reviewing yet another modern masterpiece, and that of course is Allan Wake 2.
Typewriter keys clacking. Voices. Allan was back.
For whatever reason, man, my stream chat loves to get me to play games that they know I'm not going to enjoy, and Allan Wake 2 is definitely another occurrence of that. And as someone who was not a fan of the first game, just because I didn't really find it that interesting, I'm not really too big on the survival horror genre, or I guess more of an action game in all honesty considering the first one, but I don't know, I was young when I played it, I got bored like 2 hours in and I never played it again. So yeah, that's my experience with the Allan Wake franchise, and before anybody jumps down my throat and goes, why did you play the second game if you didn't even play the first? Of course you're not going to like it. If you actually look at the official Allan Wake FAQ, the developer of this game clearly states, newcomers can enjoy the thrill ride with no past knowledge of the previous game. For the returning fans, there are tons of lore and connections to be discovered. So now that we have that established, that you don't have to play the original in order to understand and enjoy this sequel, let's go ahead and move on. Because not only did I not really enjoy Allan Wake 2 as a video game or, you know, walking simulator itself, because that's what this game is, but the game is fundamentally broken to the point where even if you are a fan of Allan Wake or survival horror games or movie games in general, I would highly suggest at least waiting a little while to pick this game up, because in the current state it released, at least on the Xbox version that I played, the game is fundamentally broken. But let's go ahead and get into all the bugs and shit that I encountered.
Allan was back.
Now, as far as game-breaking bugs go, I literally had some horrible bugs. Like, within the first minute of me playing the game, the entire game's audio was completely muted, and I'm gonna have to zoom in the screen a little bit so you don't see the old man ass. But yeah, not really a great look when you're first starting up a brand new AAA release and the game's audio's not even functioning right out the gate. So luckily, restarting the game fixed this issue, but I mean, I was a little bit confused. I wasn't sure if we had another Spider-Man 2 situation on our hands where we had to play another mission as a deaf person with the audio muted for immersion. But another really bad bug I had was there was some really bad lighting issues in this game, and at one point it's coming out of a cutscene and returning to the actual gameplay, and the game is literally having an epileptic fit, man. Like, the entire screen is flashing and it just looks horrible, dude. At first I thought it was maybe some like dramatic effect that the game was trying to relay, but nope, the game was just completely bugged out. And luckily, reloading the game once again fixed this issue, but still, man, like, how shitty is that you could be in a key story moment and your game just bugs the fuck out to the point where you don't even want to look at your screen because it's giving you a headache.
That did it.
But I think the worst glitch I encountered was literally towards the end of the game, and essentially, I'm not going to go into spoilers in this video, so don't worry about that, but basically, Saga Anderson, as she likes to call herself.
Saga Anderson. I'll be leading this case.
But I had a glitch where basically there's this obnoxious case board mechanic that you need to use in order to progress the story, and right at the end of the game, it decides it's not gonna work, and basically for the next 10 minutes, I'm trying to figure out how to actually progress the story. I reload the game several times trying to get the prompt to allow me to put the picture up on the case board, which typically the prompt to do that is pressing up on the D-pad, but as you'll notice on the screen, that prompt is literally missing. So after reloading my save a couple times, I finally just straight up restart the entire application, and luckily I'm able to progress. I think the game's glitched, guys. I can't do... Oh, there we go. It closed. I can't put the picture on the wall. And I think it's completely glitched out.
Calm down, Saga. Just think. figure it out on the board.
I can't do anything
Like
on the
I
board.
always do.
The typical button is up on the D-pad, and the prompt is not working, and it's not showing up.
2 hours later.
The game is completely locked up right now. I can't do anything. Literally nothing. See if this works. Wow, dude. Imagine if that didn't work and I was like completely stuck at the final mission.
I don't know how to get out. I don't know what to do.
Holy fuck, dude.
That wasn't me.
Still, that's a terrible glitch. That is a horrible fucking glitch to have in the very last part of the game. But the fact that there is a game-breaking bug in the game to this point, at the very end of the story, that could literally stall your progress. Like, I'm lucky it fixed itself by being able to restart the game, but to have a bug that prominent in such an important place in the story, using a mechanic that literally you're forced to use for the entirety of the game that you know should work, is beyond frustrating in my opinion. And the following sequence that you're forced to do after this is beyond mind-numbingly painful, but I'm not going to get into spoilers, guys. I really don't want to even try to break down the story, but the fact that we're dealing with bugs like this is pretty bad, and it's another reason why I'm telling you guys, like, you may want to hold off, even if you're interested in this game, on purchasing it right now. And the rest of the major bugs or glitches I encountered had to do with the combat and the very few occurrences that actually was a thing in this game, but there was one instance where I was fighting an enemy, and when I used my flashlight burst on him, he literally duplicated in real time. On top of that, there was another combat instance where I was fighting enemies and literally 2 of the exact same character models spawned and I had to kill them in a row, which was super immersion breaking because it just literally shows you how copy pasted the enemies are in this game, and there's very little in the form of enemy variety whatsoever. They literally reuse the same like 4 or 5 character models throughout the entire game. And then there was also minor combat glitches where I was like fighting a wolf and the fight got really fucking janky. I don't know if it had something to do with like a combat zone limit or something, but as you can see on the screen right now, like something in the game fundamentally broke when I was trying to fight that wolf, and something really definitely went wrong. But there's a lot of other examples too. Like I had a terrible audio spike at one point, and this happened a few times actually. And then on top of that, just kind of like minor graphical or I guess rendering issues where there was a lot of clipping or just, you know, things looked off, which I know that's going to happen in any video game. But when you add all of this up together, and I have a lot of other examples too that I'm just not going to put in this video because I don't really feel like we need to beat a dead horse, bury it, dig it back up, and then beat it some more. But I had a ton of bugs, glitches, game-breaking issues that literally stalled my progression completely. I tried to just include the ones that aren't going to inherently spoil the story. So yeah, just take that as you will. This game is not in a state, I feel like, that it should have been released, and you are going to encounter a lot of issues if you have a similar experience to me. So for that reason alone, I would recommend holding off on buying Allan Wake 2, at least until some patches come out and resolve some of these issues moving forward.
Allan was back.
So let's talk about the gameplay or lack thereof in Allan Wake 2. Now, 2 things to make clear right off the bat here. I do not consider walk and talk segments to be gameplay, and I sure as shit don't consider searching the environment for random items in order to progress the story arbitrarily to be gameplay either. In my experience, at least my limited experience with the original Allan Wake, it was supposed to be way more action focused, and the shining a flashlight on enemies and shooting them was the main gameplay loop. Well, if that is what you're looking for in Allan Wake 2, you will barely find any of that here, because between cutscenes, talk and walk segments, and looking for random items in the environment, that's going to occupy about 90 to 95% of your time. There are straight up times in this game where you will go an hour or two without encountering a single enemy in this game, and it is absolutely fucking painfully boring, bro. Like, I am not a fan of these movie type games, so if you are, maybe don't use my experience as a reference point. If you like movies or cinematic style games, like, that's fine, but just know what you're getting into. Like, this has even less gameplay than even the worst offenders in that genre. We're bordering a Telltale game at this point with how little actual gameplay or combat is actually in this game. Now, I want to touch on one thing, which I'll touch again on in the story segment of this video. There are some really obnoxious gameplay mechanics, and I use gameplay with massive fucking air quotes, dude, because it's not gameplay. It is pure padding, and it's only there to stretch out the runtime. There are just segments in this game that are just infuriating. One that comes to mind is towards the end of the game, like I mentioned, when I had that glitch where it wouldn't let me put the picture up on the case board. Well, once you're able to finally put that picture up on the case board, it begins a 15-minute segment where you're literally putting sticky notes all over the fucking board with intermittent cutscenes of Saga talking to herself in between. For 15 minutes straight, you're putting sticky notes on a fucking board at the end of the story. It kills any and all sense of progression and flow and excitement and interest you have in the game. It is painfully, mind-numbingly boring. And Saga's gameplay segments especially are horrible, man. The pacing is off. They're way too heavy on like finding random items in the environment. You'll spend at least 3 to 4 hours probably over the course of this game staring at the case board, arranging pictures and sticky notes to come to a conclusion you already knew 20 minutes ago. But for some reason, in order to progress the story, you have to use this arbitrary case board that you have to manually assign clues to under certain categories with cutscenes that play in between. It is absolutely awful. The perfect example I can think of this is literally there is a point in the game where you're trying to find a moose mask in order to put on a parade float in order to progress the story. And as stupid as that sounds, yes, it's absolutely necessary. But essentially, this moose mask is on a well. You walk by the well about 100 times, man. Like, at least I did personally. And in this segment, I walked past the well, 100 times at least, looking for where this moose mask could actually be. Well, I come to find out that what I actually needed to do all along was open up my mind place, as it's called when you're playing a Saga, walk over to the case board and assign a clue in order for the moose mask to appear in the first place. So there are literally times in this game where you are roadblocked from progressing the story, even if it makes complete and total logical sense to you. You still have to open this thing up and interact with it for no fucking reason other than to draw out the amount of time you're spending in this game just to progress the story, find a certain item you're looking for, and it literally is that bad. Like, there's several occasions where this exact scenario plays out. You'll walk by something 100 times, but you can't interact with it until you go into your mind place and put the little sticky notes on the board. It is absolutely infuriating. It's insulting to your intelligence as a player, and it's literally the most obnoxious of hand-holding tactics I've seen in quite some time. Not really a great look for, supposedly the best and brightest the FBI has to offer.
Saga Anderson. I'll be leading this case. Hey, Casey. You putting me in charge. Why now?
Look, Anderson, you're a better detective than I am.
It's the same type of page we found at Cauldron Lake.
Now, the Allan segments of this game are definitely an improvement in pretty much every way imaginable, whether it be gameplay or story, but there's a lot more combat in these segments. They feel a lot more fast-paced. There's not as much filler. There's not as much traversing an empty environment with nothing to really see or do. You don't have as many obnoxious roadblocks stopping your progression. There is kind of like this puzzle mechanic into it, which can kind of get a little annoying at times, but overall, I would say the Allan segments are definitely the highlight of this game from a gameplay perspective. But again, if you are looking for a fun, semi-action centric game here, like the original Allan Wake, which I know a lot of people like that game for its unique gameplay, you're not going to get that here. And I cannot stress enough that the gameplay is definitely a major fucking setback in this game, just for the fact that there's barely any of it here. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of the clunky survival horror type gameplay, but what was there was fine. I don't think it was that bad. In all honesty, I did enjoy some of the combat encounters. Like towards the end of Saga's story, there's a really cool combat encounter that I'm not going to spoil, but overall, man, like the gameplay in this game is boring. It is a movie game. It borderlines a Telltale game to the amount of talk and walk segments you're going to have to sit through. I would definitely say that Allan's campaign is way more combat centric and more action focused, whereas Saga's is way heavier on the movie game side of things. So definitely keep that in mind if you're interested in picking this game up potentially, because if you're not a fan of the movie game formula, this is definitely not going to be for you, and it definitely was not for me. And like I mentioned in the bugs section of this, the combat does get a little janky at times. I understand they're going for that kind of like clunky, deliberate, scary survival horror gameplay style. I think it works for the most part, but again, there just isn't enough of it there for it to actually feel good at any point, because you're so out of it by the time the next combat encounter rolls around. You've gone like an hour or two potentially without shooting at a single enemy, so it's almost like you forget how it works. But overall, I would say the gameplay of this game is definitely one of the weakest points in my mind. And I wasn't really sure where to insert this, but I'll just stick it at the end of gameplay here. The whole horror aspect of this game is heavily based on either, I guess, the ambient noises that occurred during Allan's campaign in particular, which I think are really well done, but this is really irritating, and it's a personal gripe maybe, but this game really relies too much on the jump scare horror technique, which I think is beyond fucking lazy. Throughout this game, you'll get a bunch of PNG images popping up on your screen that are supposed to scare you. And for me, this never really does anything. At every moment, it's supposed to be scary. It's like, whatever. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm immune to it. It doesn't do anything for me. It didn't even so much as startle me. The most scary thing that occurred while playing this game is when I would get an achievement to pop while playing it because of that noise. So if that tells you anything, it just feels really cheap, like something you would see in like a C-tier horror movie that came straight to DVD back in the day. Like, that's the type of vibe it gives, and I don't think they were necessary additions at all, because if anything, it's corny at the end of the day. It takes you out of the experience just that much more.
Allan was back.
Now let's talk about the story of Allan Wake 2, which is definitely the most important part of the game. Now, again, I did not play the original Allan Wake game, and I definitely wish that I had a basic understanding of it, because, you know, regardless of what Epic Games or Remedy said about this, you definitely should play the first game if you're interested in playing this one, because a lot of things just don't make any sense. Luckily, I had people in my chat who could explain things to me in real time who had played the games, so, you know, shout out to y'all. So that definitely helped my understanding, but I find it kind of strange, especially when you consider the fact that the original Allan Wake came out 13 years ago, that there wasn't like a story so far section of this game, like Spider-Man 2, for example. I mean, there's only, what, 5 years in between those two games, and Insomniac literally included a plot synopsis leading up to the point in the story where Spider-Man 2 starts off. It was really odd to me that Remedy, in a game as centric and and focused on the story as Allan Wake is, didn't have something of that equivalent to catch players up, maybe who had just forgotten in the span of 13 years what exactly happened, or like they said in that FAQ, someone new to the franchise who is coming into Allan Wake's universe for the first time. And I just feel like that's a really missed opportunity, especially when you consider that other large AAA story-based games have done this in the past, and I feel like Remedy in this case especially should have done that just for the sole purpose of there being 13 years of separation between the first game and the second one, not to mention how heavily focused this game is on the story, and on top of that, them literally marketing this game as being accessible to people like myself who never completed the first game. So definitely a missed opportunity there, and definitely takes away from the overall experience you're going to have playing this game if you are not familiar with the Allan Wake franchise. But I will say the story that is there is fine. I definitely feel like Alan's side of the story is the main focus, as it should be, and is definitely way more interesting and answers more questions and moves the plot along better, and overall has a much better flow and pacing, and is overall pretty enjoyable. Like, if you were watching my live streams, the majority of the time I was bitching like a whiny little girl was during Saga's segments of the story, because I genuinely was having a pretty shitty time. But when I was playing as Allan, honestly, the game was pretty fun. I thought the plot was interesting, the character interactions were good. There are some really unique segments on Alan's side of the story that are just, you know, I've never seen anything like it done in a video game before, so I do want to give props to Remedy for that. They are a little cringe at times, but it's definitely entertaining. I'll say that. Like, if the point of a video game like this is to entertain you, it definitely does exactly just that, and you probably will have never seen anything done in a video game before like it. So I guess props to that, and I do think the story overall is good. Saga's side of the story feels completely unnecessary at times, way too overbearing. I think it would have been better if Alan's campaign was the majority of the game, and you would have like small flashes to Saga in the real world where you're doing like a short, maybe 30-minute to an hour-long segment, and then it takes you back to Alan. I feel like that would have been the better approach. Saga having 10 hours of the 15-hour campaign dedicated to her is miserable at times, and when you really look at it, probably about 2 to 3 hours of your playtime as her are actually meaningful and move the story along in an actual, you know, significant manner. So I think that's the biggest issue with the story, is the pacing with the inclusion of the two campaigns, because Saga's really feels just unnecessarily stretched out. Fuck. But yeah. Shit, man. Bro, I'm talking about her story. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna get clipped, but this is the prime example of a game I think you could point to and be like, this would have benefited from being just a little bit shorter and cutting a lot of the filler, because by the time you're at the end of this game, you're just really sick of all the padding and unnecessary additions and unnecessary prolongings of the storyline. And when you finally arrive at the conclusion, I would like to say the payoff is satisfying, but, you know, it is and it isn't. I don't know, man. I don't want to like get into too many details, because again, the story is the whole point of this game, so I don't want to spoil it, and plus I don't even want to try to pretend to be able to have a overall understanding of the plot line of this game and try to break it down step by step. So I will just say this: 2 story expansions for this game are already planned, and the way this game ends is obvious fucking bait to get people to buy those DLC expansions. So in my mind, that's just another reason to pick this game up at a later date, not only for the technical issues you're going to encounter, but also the fact that the story is pretty much incomplete and will be added onto at a later date, and we'll probably get the true ending at that point.
Allan was back.
Now, for anyone worried that this was going to be Allan Woke 2, I would say you can probably put most of those concerns to rest. Playing through this game, none of the issues that came to mind were any sort of political messaging. Nothing really felt overbearing whatsoever. I mean, it all kind of made sense within the confines of the story. I mean, I know some people will point to the fact that Saga being a black female FBI agent and being as prominent in the story as she is, which she definitely is over prominent in my opinion. Like, this game feels more like Saga Wake Wake 2 than Allan Wake 2 at times, but I wouldn't really say it goes anywhere outside of just kind of like checking the boxes for representation. So if you can put up with that, I don't think you'll have a problem with this game in that aspect. It's not like Spider-Man 2 where they literally shove a bunch of political messaging right in your face. So if that's what you're worried it's going to be like, I would say put those concerns to bed. I don't think it's going to be anywhere near that bad, but you know, Saga definitely feels really, really forced at times, and I think that is deliberate for the ESG side of things that unfortunately pretty much every business on planet Earth caters to at this point in time. And the story definitely does suffer from that, but I don't think it really has to do with her being a black woman, so to say. You could replace Saga with pretty much any other race, ethnicity, or make them male, whatever you want to do. It wouldn't really have a major impact on the plot. It is kind of cheesy at times when they refer to her as a Viking because, you know, the image that comes to mind is obviously not Saga. You know, that's not racist. That's just common fucking sense. But anyway, I mean, aside from that, I don't really think there's any, I guess, woke or political messaging in here. It's just Saga plays way too large of a role in this plot at times, and it does get very cringeworthy. But again, that doesn't really have to do with anything aside from her just being a poorly written character at times. But overall, man, I would say the story's fine. Again, it's obvious DLC / sequel bait, so again, just another reason to wait it out and pick this game up later down the line when it's either cheaper or fixed. And not to mention, the story will actually be complete at that point.
Allan was back.
So let's talk about the sound design of this game, because I think this is actually a positive. The game sounds really well. I mean, that is when the game sound is actually working. It definitely has that kind of like Dead Space atmospheric effect, especially when you're playing as Allan, dude. Like the Allan part of the campaign, the sound design is fucking awesome. The like environmental audio and I guess three-dimensional space that it builds around you and voices coming from different directions and shit can be downright creepy at times, and it really does add to the overall environment. So I think that is an absolute win in my opinion. Again, during the Saga campaign, sound design is kind of like it's weird at times because there's this, it's almost like a glitch. I don't know if it is a glitch or not, or if it's just the directional audio kind of fucking up, but if you turn your character at the right angle, it literally essentially mutes the audio even if the person who is standing right next to you is talking still. Like, it's odd. Like, obviously if you turned around and someone is talking behind you, you would still be able to hear them perfectly clearly, but for some reason the directional audio in this game just doesn't work properly or whatever in certain occurrences. And I noticed this primarily during Saga's campaign, so I don't know if it's exclusively a problem to that. I didn't really encounter it during Allan's campaign, but that is kind of something that does throw it off. But overall, I would say the sound effects are really good. Weapons sound good. The voice acting is really well done. I think overall, man, this game has a pretty solid foundation in this aspect. Also, the soundtrack of the game, I mean, it wasn't necessarily to my taste, but a lot of people in my chat really enjoyed a lot of the music choices as well. So I do want to point to that as a positive, because while I may not have personally enjoyed it, there definitely are people out there who obviously did. So, you know, props to that one. But I think especially during the Allan campaign, the sound design is absolutely phenomenal and really builds a great sense of atmosphere and dread as you're walking through the dark place, exploring the different environments. So I just wanted to point that out as a positive. Now, moving on to our last positive category, let's talk about the graphics.
Allan was back.
Now, the graphics in this game are nothing short of beautiful. You know, Epic Games definitely did their part in helping Remedy use the Unreal Engine to its full potential. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better-looking game out there right now. This game is absolutely gorgeous, and especially in the dark place when you're playing as Allan. Like, some of the different environments just look incredible, dude. The lighting is beautiful. Everything looks top-notch in this game, 100%. I was playing on the Xbox Series X in performance mode, and the game never ceased to amaze me graphically. Overall, it was a beautiful game. I think they did a fantastic job optimizing this on the console, aside from all the major bugs and glitches and things of that nature. But from a pure performance and visual perspective, I think this game looked absolutely beautiful, and Epic definitely is owed a round of applause for this one, because you can definitely tell that they were right there helping Remedy squeeze the most out of that engine as they possibly could. So nothing but glowing praises to say about this game graphically, and I think that is definitely an area that they really killed, and especially considering the fact that you're going to be watching this game a lot of times more than playing it, it's a good thing. It's a nice game to look at.
Allan was back.
So in conclusion, guys, I think it's pretty clear where I stand on Allan Wake 2. I am not a fan of the cinematic movie game category, and going into this, I was definitely expecting it to be more in line with the first game than it turned out to actually be. I thought action and gameplay was still going to play a pretty heavy role in the overall game experience, but that's just not the case this time around. It is a majority a walk and talk simulator with a ton of cutscenes and dialogue, and a little bit of gameplay sprinkled in here and there. Now, the story of the game I thought was pretty enjoyable, even as someone who did not finish the first Allan Wake game, and even though they did advertise this game as being able to be enjoyed by people who have not played the first game, I would definitely recommend that you either watch someone play through it, watch a very detailed lore breakdown video of the first game and the DLCs, or just play it for yourself, because I think that would have added a lot more to the experience, and I kind of wish I would have had that understanding going in. Luckily, I did have people in my chat explaining it to me along the way, so that did help fill in the gaps where I had questions, but overall, I don't think there is a suitable substitute for actually just going and experiencing the first game's story one way or the other. But that being said, the graphics look great, the sound design is great. It's just this game suffers from a lot of game-breaking bugs and glitches and just overall annoyances with the way the game is set up, especially in terms of the pacing when it comes to Saga's campaign. At times, it just feels completely unnecessary. Allan should have been the focus of this game. He is definitely the focus of the story, but for some reason, you're playing almost 2/3 of this game through the perspective of Saga doing a bunch of annoying fetch quests and find and seek activities within the different environments of the game, and it just really holds it back. I wanted to like this game at times. I went in with an open mind, even though I was not really a fan of the first game, and I will be honest, I did not enjoy this game overall. I do regret playing it. It was downright miserable at times. It does not escape from the typical Remedy issue of just having some of the worst gimmick boss fights in the industry. The padding mechanics are off the fucking chart, especially in Saga's campaign, to the point where it literally blocks you from progressing the story, even though you have all the logical clues to do so, but some arbitrary menu prevents you from actually acting upon that information you found out. It feels super fucking hand-holdy. I don't know, man. I just don't really know what else to say at this point other than I would avoid this game like the fucking dark place at this point. You know, if you really want to play it, I would definitely recommend, just for the fact that it has as many bugs as it does, waiting until some major patches or fixes come out for this game so you don't suffer the same way I did throughout my gameplay experience with all the issues I encountered. But on top of that, with the obvious DLC bait ending, there's not really a huge rush to go out and buy the game anyway, because you're just going to be waiting for those DLCs to come out to get the full picture of the story that this game is looking to tell. So with that said, guys, I would not recommend Allan Wake 2. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe you disagree, you know, maybe this game is for you. If you like the traditional movie game formula, you'll probably feel right at home and you'll probably enjoy this. Or if you're just a really big Allan Wake fan, I could definitely see how you would enjoy this game as well. But speaking from my perspective, it definitely was not for me, and based on my experience, I would not recommend it. If I had to give this game a rating, I think I'd probably give it a 6, in all honesty. Like, I took some time, I thought about it, and, you know, overall, like I said, it's not for me, but I do think it does some things right, and considering the genre it's in, I would say it doesn't deserve lower than a 6. It's definitely above average. I don't don't think it's great. I wouldn't even say it's good. But again, that is just my subjective opinion on the game. If you enjoyed the game, that's great. I'm really happy for you. I can only speak to my personal experience, and this is yet another example of what I hate about the video game industry: prioritizing cutscenes, cinematics, dialogue, and storytelling over the most fundamental principle that should be in every single video game out there, and that, of course, is the actual gameplay. And Allan Wake 2, in my opinion, is just another example of the current state of the modern video game industry and everything I absolutely hate about it. In fact, I think our boy Allan described the modern video game industry perfectly in this game.
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.
A downward spiral. And it's time to flush that shit down the toilet.